Hi, Katie. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were introduced through some mutual friends, and where I started that conversation was my company has been looking for ways to do better with diversity and equity and inclusion, and trying to put together ideas for it. And they said you have to talk to Katie. She's got some great ideas. And so I thought we'd have a conversation about what's working for you, what others might be able to learn from it, and maybe for level set. I just heard your background was a sort of a tour through every imaginable business role. So I'd love to tell people where you're coming from, and then kind of what you're doing now and how it's been successful.
Yeah, so I started my journey working for a fitness franchise. I did their people and operations for over 10 locations in Chicagoland. And then I moved on to working in advertising, doing accounting and finance, because I found that really interesting. And then I did a little bit of project management and business production management work. And then I moved into more of the operational side of like managing on that side. And then I kind of found Grand Studio and we kind of explored what my role was going to be. And it's definitely landed more on this, the people side of
hmm
things.
And so we were just briefly chatting about kind of where you created a committee internally to look at diversity and equity and inclusion, and it sounds like you've had some success there. We'd just love to hear what that's like and what you guys have been doing.
Yeah. So our diversity, equity, inclusion started now over 2 years ago. The committee was just started last year, but we took a few steps on our path to find more diverse designers. The first was internally. I met with everyone and we talked about how they could best be supported and where we were lacking. And we found really great ideas within that to kind of help make sure everyone we currently have feels supported to do their best work so that we keep our retention up so that we can start adding new people to the studio. Um, Once the committee was founded and created, we've been meeting to kind of discuss and solve for problems like our job postings, our career site, and our About Us pages. So we looked at our website as it currently was, and it just was updated right at the beginning of the year. And we looked for pain points. Was it inclusive? Little things that you might not think about, like are all of our photos tagged for screen readers? Is our language inclusive? Is our process transparent? And is it creating a welcoming environment that kind of shows who we are at Grand Studio? So we looked at that and we iterated and we did a lot of revisions to kind of showcase our culture and our beliefs at Grand Studio, and then also be transparent about our process and what we offer to designers around growth and flexibility and interesting projects. We also looked at every single one of our job postings, and feel free to interrupt me if
No, it's good.
anything like
No, go for it.
sounds interesting. Then we looked at all of our job postings, and we realized that we had done this 2 years ago, and we thought we had hit most of the pain points, but they were still really leaning towards a masculine voice, which isn't as inclusive. So we looked at it from a language perspective and also wanted to acknowledge that designers can come from different backgrounds. So we took out some things that were not qualifiers anymore for us, like number of years experience.
Sure,
We're more
sure.
interested in the quality of work than the number of years or specific educational backgrounds. We find that a lot of our designers at Grand Studio have different paths, whether that be from architecture or playwriting. So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't excluding people or
Yeah. You know,
deterring them from applying.
I really think you're onto something. And I think especially in our sort of collective fields of, design and software, it really is about the work you can create. And I think we did this. We had a similar journey looking at our job postings and kind of taking things into, just like through a new lens and saying like, do we really need like what is 5 years experience? And if someone showed up and had work that demonstrated, the competency we were looking for, does that even really matter? And so I think for us, they became sort of like maybe indicators, but certainly not gates. And so taking them out, I think we did this very same thing, and especially around things like, I hate to say it, even like, your like I think you mentioned education. Is it a prerequisite? No, I mean it sort of is telling and directionally interesting, but again, the work can speak for itself. I think it can be really powerful. So we look for that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see what how do you think, what have you done, that kind of thing. I'm curious. You mentioned kind of going through the job postings. Anything else besides those like qualifiers that you found, kind of maybe in your first and second passes now that you might be able to share?
Um, we looked at the language and how we approached it instead of making it very us centric, like we expect this. It's what they can expect from us because this really needs to be a mutual beneficial
Hmm.
relationship. Um, and also, instead of saying you must have these things, we looked at it as a designer that is really successful at Grand Studio right now might have these qualities or might have this type of experience. So that if you didn't meet every single bullet point or you didn't have the opportunities that maybe we could afford you, that you still would feel comfortable applying.
Oh, that's great. I'm curious because it sounds like you've had a couple of iterations. Were you able to pinpoint any sort of, once we made these kinds of changes, we got these different kinds of results later?
Yeah, our once we took away from the first round, and I also did, we're measuring our value, looking at our metrics and looking
Sure.
at who's applying and when. And there's definitely been more spikes because of the impact of COVID. But we're seeing a lot more female candidates apply now that we've taken out more of the masculine and it's a more gender neutral job posting and job description because it's been found that women, if you don't meet all of the bullet points, you're less likely
Yeah.
as a female to apply. So we have seen a spike in that. Um, I also think that it's one of the things that I really like and that I train everyone who comes onto the team who's new to interviewing and reviewing portfolios is we operate with work first. So unconscious bias is a real thing. We all have it, and in order to limit that, all we look at is a link to the portfolio. We don't look at their name, their resume, their cover letter. We open up case studies and look at the work.
Hmm.
Once they pass through to an interview, then and we decide that that's when we'll start like digging into questions that we may have about the structure of their team or where they've been before.
Oh, that's a great idea. I like that a lot. I'm going to steal that one right now, starting today. How about tell me about
Yeah,
what?
it's really helped.
Yeah, because really it strips away anything that might be other than. I mean, it's like everyone agrees at the beginning. All we want to do is look at the work, but then you bring in all these sort of biases based on little clues you get from other things. How about what about the inclusion side of things? I know you kind of said you did some work with the about page and some other things. And any other sort of like tidbits that you picked up that were particularly successful?
Yeah, realizing one of the things that we did that made our process a little more inclusive is we took out a homework challenge. We had a design challenge
Okay.
that we took out a while ago. We just realized it wasn't equitable. Not everybody has the same amount of time. Somebody who might be searching for a job could be employed, they could be a caretaker. They just might not have the same amount of time to give. We say, okay, 3 to 6 hours, but somebody might, in actuality, only have an hour, or another person might have 10 hours. So it really wasn't a fair comparison. And it just, we're finding that more people are interested in the process and are capable of doing the work that we do, and we can find that other ways. We ended up shortening our interview for the first round, which I think really helped. It's only a half hour. Um, and this allowed us to find out really quickly if people could parse down a problem, a complex problem, and walk us through how to solve it from their portfolio, any project of their choosing. We also started getting really detailed with our process on our careers page. So it tells you exactly the transparency. This is the steps of our interview process. This is who you're going to be meeting with, and this is what we'll be talking about. And this is about how long it will take for us to get back to you. So being as open and honest about our process, kind of assuring people that they know what to expect. Even in our non-designer roles, I've been providing people with the types of questions we're going to ask them
Hmm.
um, because we want people to be able to perform at their best. It's an interview shouldn't be about trying to trick or catch people off guard. People are already nervous. I think
Right.
also acknowledging that we're in weird times. Your kid might run in the background, your child, there might be noise from a roommate. That's okay. Creating an environment where we're a little more human.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I'm curious. So this is a lot about how a designer might find you and how they might interact with the process. I'm curious, have you had any luck on sort of the outbound outreach side of, um, where can people meet new kinds of people?
Yeah, I think there is a ton of outlets that are underutilized, whether that's Queer Design Club or Blacks Who Design or Latinx designers. There are tons of non-traditional sourcing outside of LinkedIn where you can find great talent. Um, there's also the ladies at UX in Chicago and
Mhm.
all over, where I have had the wonderful opportunity to speak and talk to them about kind of how to it's escaping me right now, how to really tailor their
Mhm.
portfolios based on what they're looking for. Also, one of the things that's really worked well for us is growing designers. So investing in junior talent,
Sure.
and nurturing them and giving them opportunities to grow.
Chris, tell me more about this idea of kind of coaching people to tailor what they're giving over in the interview. Because I'm trying to abstract it for like our developer side of things too, but I'm sure other jobs and other roles in other industries. What kind of advice were you giving people that you thought was particularly successful?
Yeah. So talking about how to parse down the job postings so that they can curate, you don't have to redo your portfolio site, but you can always send, a curated deck, or if you're going into an interview, having a deck or something
Mm.
prepared that's a little bit more detailed. Because I think sometimes when people work on a big project, and there's lots of moving parts and other people involved, they focus on the big picture. But I really want to hear about someone's superpower. I want to know what exactly they did and how they contributed. So making sure that they can kind of talk about the problem or whatever they were trying to execute, but then dig into their process because that's a little more interesting to
Yeah,
me.
I agree because I think one of the things for us similarly is, um, it's rare that anyone does anything on a solo mission and it's just them. So like figuring out like how they contributed, what they thought about, maybe what ideas they had that weren't included in the final product that actually would have been pretty great. I think you might learn something kind of interesting there, and digging in really kind of can reveal some of that. You
Yeah.
mentioned the speaking side of things. What are you doing? It sounds like you're doing something to kind of get your message out. What are you looking for, and what are the kinds of things that you like talking about out there in the world?
I love talking about creating sustainable hiring practices. And I really love getting to get in touch with people who are maybe just getting into design or early in their career, and they want to understand what it's like to work at a consultancy, to how to present their work and build a great portfolio. I do a lot of, I would call it like the speed dating portfolios, where you have 20 minutes and you can sit down with a student and kind of walk them through. They can walk you through a project and then you can give feedback. I love doing that. I love talking about how to design an HR and hiring practice. I think before working at Grand, this idea of design was kind of, you know, big, and I don't think I really understood what it is. But using design thinking and designing every step so that you create this really impactful experience, and even if someone doesn't maybe get hired, they still are excited about your studio and your brand. And there's other opportunities that might arise where then your paths cross again, and they are ready to work with you.
Yeah, that's great because I know that for us, we find that we and even clients we interact with, they pay so much attention to one part of the business process, but often the hiring process is just sort of left to, I guess we'll put up a job posting, and it's not that it's thoughtless, but it's not a designed experience, and I think there's a lot to be said for making that part of the journey for, even as you say, even people that don't end up working with the company. And we found that kind of maintaining and nurturing relationships with people that, let's say, there's someone who we just wasn't a fit at the time because they're, either the work or the situation just wasn't right. Time passes and all of a sudden you go, even like, 2020 for a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, did that year just fly by us? And now the person who had no experience has, instead of 6 months, they've got 2 years and 6 months. It's like, oh, interesting. Now look at all the stuff they've done since then. And so like keeping that as like a long-term relationship is probably pretty valuable too. You know,
Yeah, I think
I'm
we've been able to, oh,
no, go ahead.
go ahead. I think we've been able to also keep in touch with people who might not be a great match for us because it's just their expertise is not the type of work that we do, but we've been able to introduce them to people who they do the type of work that they're great at. And that's been really wonderful for us too, is not just being in the moment, but being able to share talent with other people in the industry that have different focus areas.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, maybe as a final thought here, do you have any ideas or strategies around what happens with this idea as the world begins to open up again and we're starting to see, there might be time we see actual people in person in the next, 3 to 6 months. Does that change or does it give you any new ideas about what can be done to improve success here?
Yeah, I'm so excited. We actually, right before COVID hit, we executed our first one in Chicago. We started having breakfasts. So, where we invited just talented designers that we wanted to get to know and creating an open space to discuss topics. And it was really wonderful and introduced us to a ton of people that our paths might not have crossed with. And I'm excited for the world to reopen, to kind of find new opportunities on where to meet new and interesting people in the design world, and also new opportunities to mentor younger designers, and hopefully create relationships in Chicago and also outside of Chicago now that it looks like remote work is going to be something that sticks around.
Yep.
Um, so that, we can start to meet more talented and, wonderful designers from all over.
That's really great. Hey, well, thanks for sharing a bunch of awesome ideas, almost all of which I will immediately steal and borrow because they're really helpful and great. I appreciate it. And I think that the breakfast idea, I am someone who loves to, if I can meet you while we're having a coffee or lunch, always in for that. So great
Yeah.
to chat with you today and good luck with the work you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks. Great to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
Hey there, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more content just like that.